Hello, I'm Mary Beth SABOTAGING, clinical hypnotherapist and life coach and founder of the Psychoenergetic Institute and developer of the energy model of therapeutic change. And wanted to talk today about the truth about your truth and why your truth is probably the very thing, very likely may be the obstacle that is holding you back and blocking your success and happiness and sabotaging your relationships. So, about 3 years ago, a couple came in for coaching for me, couple coaching, and their names were Brad and Karen. And Brad was really stuck in a lot of basically lies that he told himself that he was then presenting as this is my truth, this is my truth. And he was just determined that Karen, if she went off to work and was working with a client, that somehow she was going to end up on a date with them. And that if she went out with their girlfriends, they were out chasing men. And it was just this constant scenario that he had in his head that he was just expecting her to jump through every hoop to honor. He would say she needs to honor my truth, she needs to honor my truth. So he had proposed to her and she did love him. However, this continued, and through the coaching he was not willing to let go of his truth. And Karen ultimately made the decision that she could not live her lifetime walking on eggshells around his truth, which were basically lies about what he thought about her. And she severed the relationship and she severed it. She moved on, and much to his dismay, but to this day, he still hangs on to his truth that this is what women do. So that, basically, he was locked into a delusion that that this was his truth, that his experience from the past manifested as truth because it was his truth. And so through this whole thing, there was absolutely no reasoning with him because he was locked into that. He was holding that truth. And so down the road, about a year later, I had another client that came in, and his dad had left when he was 5 years old. And it was a sudden thing. There wasn't a lot of explanation, and he never heard from his dad again. And 7 years later his dad passed away, and so this just ate at him. And he had heard the stories, and his dad didn't care about him, and he was mean, and he never reached back and tried to contact his son. And so when the son got into his late teens and 20s, he turned to drugs, and he just really started living a destructive lifestyle for himself. And one, as anyone who has ever had somebody with addiction in their family, or really any type of chronic illness or mental illness, knows it doesn't just hurt the person, it takes its toll on everyone in your life. So he had gone through a couple years of therapy. And at this point, when his aunt actually approached me, and she came first, and she explained to me that what was going on with him and where this was coming from. So she was wise enough to see this. And what happened was she shared with me that the father did not leave willingly. He was pushed out. The mother at that time was having an affair. And that although she thought the father was very nice, then there was the threat for that the mother put out of losing custody of the child. So, and what they ended up doing was the father had, for those 7 years before he passed, had been writing letters and sending gifts and sending things, and they were all being returned to him. So this child was never told this. And so the aunt was actually talking to me to say, oh, what, how can I help give him some truth? And I think that she was on that balance of he's going to hate the whole family, but he's been told a lie, and he's been basing his truth, which, to be fair, he didn't come in saying this is my truth, but in a sense, he probably thought that because everybody is saying that these days. So anyway, we were able to get him in and kind of run an intervention that was really able. He actually was able to overcome his addiction because of this. And there was some trauma on that end and some forgiveness that needed to take place. And apparently the aunt knew it was wrong, but went along with it. And when the husband died, then, years later, they were divorced by then. She had a lot of guilt for years. And then watching him and watching how this happened. So fortunately for this young man, he was so desperate and just so uh, in pain that he was willing to accept this new information and a new perspective, because he had hated his dad, and he was almost living his life as, see what you did to me. I'm in this pain, and this is all because of him. But he accepted that new information, and the aunt confronted the family and said to them, if you want this boy back, if we want to have him back, everybody has to own up. We need to go through this process and tell him the truth and ask forgiveness. And so over time that did happen, and the family has been reconciled, and he has this peace of knowing how much his dad loved him, and was able to get to know some of the dad's family, which was withheld from him. So there's been a lot of healing. So we have two scenarios: one person who was open to new information, and one who was locked into his truth. So let's go back to 2011. It was around that time when Oprah Winfrey first started coming up with your truth and own your truth and stand on your truth and all this. And I remember hearing that and saying, no, this is not right, because if we start going by our truth, then that locks us into really limited information. And I watched this trend just go through the mental health field, and I see counselors and healers using it, and stand on your truth, and empower yourself. And I saw how it affected the workplace that I was in at that time, when previously we could solve issues and hear each other's perspectives, and things just flowed. Suddenly people were coming in and going, nope, I don't want to hear it. This is my truth. And everybody became protective. And what they were doing is guarding their misinformation and dysfunction, and holding on to it and protecting it as their truth. And so I started realizing that this whole thing about your truth is one of the biggest lies and the most perpetuating lies that has damaged our society, because it's resulted in people holding on to their own bullshit, and puppeteering parroting those terms that the puppet masters have put out. And it's a three-dimensional, low vibration mindset of, this is what I think, and I'm no longer open. I'm isolating myself to new information. And so people are walking around with this mindset, thinking that they're empowered, and blocking themselves off from new information. So why is this so damaging? The one thing is it opens your mind up to brainwashing. It opens us up. It opens that door for a society to be easily brainwashed, because if everybody is so locked into their truth, we can be fed anything and not be willing to sift as long as it serves what we need for that moment. I need this past trauma to hold on to, or I need this view of myself to hold on to, or this view of you to hold on to, or this situation because it serves me. And so I'm holding on to it, whether or not it is the truth. So I believe that this is just, one of the most damaging things. And it breaks my heart to see how the professional, the mental health community, and the church, and all these leaders, businesses, everyone is jumping onto this concept, and parents are teaching this to their kids. So basically, what we're teaching them, in a sense, is you decide what the truth is. And we know that if it's not the truth, it's lies. And then you hold on to them really, really tight. So if you're having trouble with this, hang with me, because I think you'll see as we go what I'm talking about here. So first of all, let's just make one thing very clear. There is no such thing as your truth or my truth. There is only the truth, and the truth may or may not, depending on how off skew our truth is, the one that we're holding on to. So that it's often somewhere in between. So let's take a car accident, for example. You have 5 witnesses to this car accident, and so each one of them has a different perspective. Maybe one was standing up on a bridge watching, and one was standing on a bank, and one was in the car behind the person, and the other's watching it in their rear view mirror. So, and then you have the person that's actually in the car with the person, and let's assume they came out okay so they can give their version. So you have these 5 different perspectives. And if you ask each person, then these perspectives can be so different that it makes it impossible for 2 of them to be true at the same time. And so the question that we have to ask then is there such thing as is real truth? Or is it all in how we perceive it? So I'm here to tell you there is real truth. There were actual events in that accident. There was a series of events and the way that it happened. There was also a cause of why this happened. So there is a course of events that caused this. And so in order to get the most accurate, and in a case like the accident, then we don't sometimes it's almost impossible, and especially if there's a death, they have to look at the forensic. There's so many other things. They have to examine the car and all kinds of things. But it's when people come together to receive new information without giving up what you know. And I have to just put that disclaimer in there, because if I see somebody in road rage running someone off the road, and then there's 3 of their buddies standing there saying, "Oh, he wasn't mad, he didn't do that," then I'm not going to change my view. I'm going to go with what I saw. But it's just kind of that whole thing, and not that even for an accident they have to come together, but I just want you to look at that perspective of 5 people looking at the same thing makes see 5 very different things, and none of them will be completely accurate, because there is a course of events, there's a cause and effect, and the way things happen. So where do we get our truth from? When we're sitting there and we're saying my truth and your truth, where do we get that from? The first place we get it from is our own experience. And that is, again, going back to the accident scene, it's a very limited view, because we're seeing it from a 3-dimensional angle, which is one angle. We also get our truths from what we are told, maybe in school or by a parent or something. We're getting the truth from what we are told. We get our truth, some people, from the media, I have people that if it's not in the news, it's not true, but if it's in the news, it's true. And so they never go beyond that, the three-dimensional, low vibrational media that we have these days that likes to keep us in that low vibration. So a lot of people, their truth comes from the media. In music is one of the biggest ways to influence a culture. So we can do wonderful things in healing with music, but we can also create. You hear a lot of the music now, and it's a lot of self-demeaning. It's demeaning women and things like that. And you look at the cultures of where this is taking place, and look how the women are treated, and you can kind of see that, okay, like, it's just these truths that these people hold come from, we get them from all sources. Not everybody is going to be influenced by one particular thing. There's people probably watching this saying, I don't even watch the news. But we just have to be aware of where we're getting our truths from. I remember songs, if there was a sad song, you're sitting there crying and listening to that song all by myself as a kid, and then thinking, oh, I'm all by myself, I'm lonely, so, and especially kids are prone to this, but adults are, I'm shocked these days to see the adults that are just prone to what they're told. So we also get our truth from the school system, the education system, and the opinions of those who teach it. So I hear so many people say, I sent my kids to school and they came back a different person. And it's their peers in school, it's everything. I sent my kids off to college and this whole other kid came back. And a kid that does not reflect that natural spirit that my child had when they left. We get our truths from religious beliefs and religious mandates, and religious leaders. So, as you all know, not every religious leader is going to tell you the truth, because sometimes they have their own agenda. So we have this information that comes into to us, and that becomes our truth. We get it from family and friends. And I kind of go back to, with education, religion, parents, family, is the whole concept of syncing. Syncing is when something comes into us, usually from an authority figure, about ourselves, and we adopt that as truth. If somebody says to a child, you're inadequate, you'll amount to nothing, you never will, that becomes it. When we get into the my truth, then those kind of things become their truth. So are those things true? No, they're lies. But and that's the danger of saying my truth and believing that it's truth because it's my truth. So what we need to understand is, what we put on into our minds are like computers. We are garbage in, garbage out. So if we get garbage in for our truth, then our truth is going to be garbage. And that's why it's so dangerous to say my truth and your truth. So let's get into this just a little bit deeper here. So how does my truth and your truth, how does that block your success and sabotage your relationships and block your happiness? It blocks you. My truth and your truth, it blocks you from new information that could help you solve a problem or bring a new understanding or enlightenment that would change your perspective of where you fit into the equation. So if you go back to Ken, the client that I had that didn't understand why his dad left, what if he had stuck in his truth? I'm sure that by now he would be a 30-year-old addict alcoholic, but he relinquished that information. And again, it probably because he wasn't listening to the term my truth, so he wasn't clinging to that. It the next thing is it blocks you from mutual interaction engagement with other people to share perspectives. And again, I shared with you what I started seeing in the workplace, and it was just this huge division because people divided up into groups, and this was this group's truth, and this was this group's truth, and in those truth groups was division because it was my truth and your truth and or truth. I'm getting too excited and talking too fast. So it was this whole thing of a lack now of interaction and engagement with other people, because now you have all these entities walking around like little islands saying, this is my truth, don't touch me. So talk about parroting a brainwashing phrase. And then it keeps people in a place, many people in a place of victimhood and darkness. And I know some people might be thinking, no, I use it as affirming. We'll talk about that in a minute. But a lot, I go, I'm on a few sites and I have clients with PTSD, but one of the ways I help myself become better at what I do to understand them is I go to some of the PTSD websites and things, and what I see is people that they don't want to relinquish. I have PTSD, and I've come to the conclusion after being in the counseling and coaching field since the 1980s that trauma and pain is almost a birthright of being on this planet, of being human. And while some people may be a little more privileged or things, and then you hear things that happen from them too, and a lot of them don't escape it either. But we all have trauma and pain. And in the past, we've encouraged people to relinquish that and to work through it and to take in new information. But now I see on these sites, this is my truth. And somebody comes and says, have you ever considered this or this? Hey, stay out of this. This is my truth, and you're offending me. So there's this lack of interaction, and it's great for my pocketbook as a counselor if people want to hold on to these things, because if they do, they're going to need counselors, they're going to need life coaches. So it's great. There is an industry that benefits from all this. It's the health fields, the pharmaceutical, all these industries benefit from this. And so, but it does nothing for the people because it keeps them in that dark place and they become protective over that. And so this is my badge of my wound to carry, and nobody's going to touch this. And so it has caused people to hold on to it instead of releasing it and finding new information. And one thing I love about doing hypnotherapy is I can bring people back to the event and I can have them look at it from other perspectives, and even have them kind of have a meeting with their old self or the wounded self and give them another perspective. And I have watched people just like amazingly, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Can you see my hair sticking up? But amazingly heal from this because they suddenly are receiving new information from where their higher self, because we also bring with us into this world our spiritual higher self. But if we stay in a three-dimensional reality, low vibration, then we only look at what we're told. We look at those phrases that are given us to stay in a delusional place. Then the other thing is it keeps many people in a place, I did just cover this, of protecting their trauma rather than releasing it. And to that, I've had my own trauma in my life. God knows, I just lost my husband 4 weeks ago suddenly. So, so yes, I'm not a stranger to trauma, and that's just one of the things over the years. And so, but how we respond and what information is our responsibility. And if we hold that, I could sit here and trust me, it's not easy. I am grieving and it is hard, but I have a choice. I can use this as a stepping stone to continue to live my life purpose, or I can hold on to that as the wounded person and say, this is my truth. I'm alone. He's gone. And I can hold that. And I know that's not what he would want. And so as I can, step out and do as I can as I heal too. So it's I'm not going to protect that grief. I'm going to release it a little bit at a time. It doesn't mean I'll release my husband, and it doesn't mean I'll never forget him and he won't always be here, but I have to release that trauma, that getting that phone call from his job, and and never seeing him again, him walking out the door and 4 hours later he's gone. I'll never there I'll never forget it, but I can release that. Do you see what I mean? So the other thing that it does is this your truth, my truth, it forces other people to tiptoe around your truth. So if every person in the world is holding on to my truth, then we're all tiptoeing around each other in an extremely codependent, dysfunctional way. And I don't like I don't like codependency, but I like interdependency, because we are interdependent in certain ways, but not if you have my truth, you go into codependent. So you operate in this very isolated little islands, walking on eggshells around each other's truths. I don't want anybody walking on eggshells around me, around my grief. I would rather be able to release it and deal with it, and just receive any new information as I can. Every so often, somebody will come and say, "Hey, I think your husband would want this or that," and I could say, "Nope, nope." Or I could take that information, and I can't tell you how much it helps to have that new information come in for me. So your truth, it seeks support and understanding from other people while ignoring and not understanding their truth. So I need to get on. I'm getting into the last couple of minutes. So but what if it's how you use your affirmations? So if your affirmations are, I am successful, I am divinely created, I am amazing, and all this, then guess what? That's not your truth. That is the truth. So no matter what has been sunken into you, what wounds have come in, the reality is you have divine purpose, and you are an amazing five-dimensional being, although many people are not awake to that yet. So if you're not awake to that yet, look, you're far more powerful than you realize. So that is the truth. You are amazing. We all know that person who is maybe conceited and has an inflated sense of ego that you're just like, well, that's because they're operating in their truth, and it comes from a place of insecurity and fear and pain. So the truth comes from a place of confidence and peace and understanding and willingness to accept new information. So just know that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. You were created for a divine purpose, just as you are. And you have everything that you need to succeed. So regardless of what your past trauma or pain is, all those affirmations that people try to use with my truth are not, they're not your truth, they're true. Okay, so I want you to know that as you leave today, and I hope that you will understand the damaging lie that your truth and my truth is, and just step into the truth. And there's nothing better than the truth, because it opens us up to new information, and it opens us up to that beautiful interaction that helps us to grow and reach our divine purpose, to achieve that happiness and to have better relationships. So thanks. I hope you enjoyed this talk. And check us out at energymodelofchange.com. That's at the Psychoenergetic Institute. If you're interested in going through our program and streamlining your life and releasing all the obstacles and blockages to create the space, check us out. Again, the energymodelofchange.com. Thanks and have a great day. Didn't I